Hey everyone, just want to apologize. This did a fantastic interview with Yaron Weitzman, the author of A Hollywood Ending, The Dreams and Drama of the LeBron Lakers, and the video portion on my end was not working. So it was terrible. I feel bad. It never happened before, but do not see me. But the important thing is that you do see Yaron. Every time he speaks, you'll be able to see him. When I do, you'll just see my name on the blank screen. So I do apologize, but I hope you enjoy the interview because Yaron was great, and it is a fantastic book. Again, it's A Hollywood Ending, The Dreams and Drama of the LeBron Lakers. Hope you enjoy. Bye-bye.
Welcome to The Jewish Lens, a podcast to discuss anything and everything from a Jewish perspective. Now, please help me welcome the man who controls the media, your host, Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of The Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen, and today I'm thrilled to welcome an award-winning NBA writer. He's written for such places as The Bleacher Report, Fox Sports, and GQ. He was once responsible for bringing a daily allotment of Cheez Doodles to Stephen A. Smith, and he's the author of 2 books, including his newest, A Hollywood Ending, The Dreams and Drama of the LeBron Lakers. Please help me welcome Yaron Weitzman. Yaron, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we have a lot to cover. It's a great book, and we're going to get to that. But before we get to it, I want to start by going back with you. Where did you grow up? And are you from New York originally?
Yeah, I grew up in New Rochelle.
New Rochelle. So what was family life like for you, in particular with regard to Judaism? Were you observant, conservative, reform, or anything?
Yeah, no, I grew up in and still am in a modern Orthodox home, and I still have a modern Orthodox home.
Oh, you still to this day, everything?
Yes.
Were you always interested in writing as a kid? And when did you discover that you had a talent for it?
Writing? No, I was a sport. Like my interest in writing came via my love of, sports. Right, I was a sports nut. That's funny. I have a 6-year-old now, a boy who has the, I call it the bug. Right, some kids with sports, they just have it, and he was like me. There's a difference between liking it and being obsessed with it, and just wanting to, box scores and read all of it and all that stuff. And that was me. And then the way I describe it is I grew up in the, so I'm 37 years old. So I grew up in the shadow and the rise sort of the two things happening at once, the Moneyball generation, where the book comes out. I think everyone knows Moneyball now as a movie, basically the idea of how you learn about a team from a GM's perspective, and the rise of the fantasy sports and the fantasy sports boom. And sort of the idea of your, you consume sports via the perspective of a GM, right? So that was me, and I was part of that generation. So I went to study sports management, thought I wanted to be a GM, and then quickly learned that, I like talking about the games and the people and the sociological aspects, and so then I started writing from there.
Who were your teams growing up? Who were your favorite teams?
Mets. I got my Mets shirt on now, actually. Mets.
I do too, actually. I have my Mets.
There you go. Mets, Jets, because they go together. Mets, Jets, Knicks. Those were the teams. Knicks. I've punted as an NBA reporter. I'm objective, but Mets and Jets still live.
So you have the same level of suffering that I do, but I have a little bit more.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Correct.
So what era did you come into the Knicks? What you were there in like the 2000s then?
Era in the Knicks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Knicks. I mean, Allen Houston. Sorry about that. Allen Houston was sort of my favorite player that I loved growing up. So that was where the 99 2000 team. Those not the 90s Knicks. I actually make fun of people my age who talk about how they love the 90s Knicks, and I say that's not possible. You're too young. You can't remember a team that when they were 6 years old. So the Sprewell, Allen Houston Knicks were sort of my first. Those were my first teams.
I did love the 90s Knicks. I'm a little older than you, but I did love the 90s Knicks.
Yeah,
that was my favorite era of their team, and of course they still didn't win. So you went to school for journalism. That's what you did go to school for.
No. I went to school for sports management.
Sports management, right.
But then I realized I wanted to start writing, so I started writing for the school paper, the NYU newspaper, and then blogging and doing stuff like that. And then after college, I got a job at the Journal News, which is the Westchester and Rockland County local, covering sports, so mostly girls high school basketball. Some cheerleading too, which to this day, I don't think I've been chewed out more than the cheerleading moms chewed me out. I'm not even kidding. They were mean and fierce. And yeah, and then from there, you know some people. I ended up writing a little bit for Slam Magazine, which was my intro into the NBA world, and yeah, kind of stayed there.
So when did you first start covering the teams? Around what years?
Which teams?
Well, you started covering sports teams later on. Like you started covering basketball teams.
Yeah, so let's say I graduated college 2011, and then spent about a year at the Journal News covering high school sports, and then around, let's say 2013-ish, 2014, started covering the NBA a little bit from a very surface level perspective, right? And not doing anything deep, and just kind of kept working it from there.
So you just kind of mentioned it before. Did you have to cover the Knicks at all, or no?
I covered one of my first. I covered the Knicks as a beat writer for Bleacher Report, which is different than a normal beat writer. But as a beat writer for Bleacher Report, also around 2016, the final Phil Jackson years. Carmelo Anthony, Phil Jackson, Jeff Hornacek was sort of the coach I was around a lot. Those years. Is
it tough to be objective when you cover a team that you root for?
No, I mean you stop rooting for them like that. Not for me, maybe other people. One, you start rooting for your work and what works for you to get your job done. Two, I would say it's hard to be objective, but for different reasons. It's hard to be objective not because you were a Knicks fan growing up. It's hard to be objective because you like player X or GMY is nice to you or things like that. That's where it becomes more difficult than what your rooting interests are.
Okay, I do have to hear this story that we mentioned in the intro. So in your bio on your site, it says you were responsible for bringing Cheez Doodles to Stephen A. Smith. So yeah. I said, where was this? How did that come about? And most importantly, crunchy or puffed Cheez Doodles? So
it's a good question. So in college, I interned at ESPN New York Radio. It was I think it was 1050 if I remember right back then. And this was college, so I'd be there 3 times a week. I don't even know what I was doing. I was bad with the tech stuff, but like honestly, I don't even know. Whatever. 3 times a week, and this was you get different shifts. And so Michael Kay and Don LaGreca were a big show there. There was Brendan Tierney, I think, was there. And then he's on WFAN now.
Yeah.
And then there's and then Stephen A. Smith. This was sort of at the I think if you look at the timeline, this was sort of the beginning of his comeback, right? So he was big, he made a show, then he was basically fired by ESPN, ended up in the wilderness, and then he started making his comeback. So he had a radio show night, I think, or whatever. And for some reason, Stephen A. Smith loved cheese. And this was, your intern, what you do, so you'd get a lot of snacks. That's obviously meals runs, which is fine, right? And there it was ESPN Radio was housed. Then New York, ESPN Radio New York was housed above MSG. So I would go down. So you'd be sent into Penn Station to get pizza or Diet Coke for I think Don LaGreca, if I remember correctly. Michael Kay, maybe we're big Diet Coke people. And Stephen A. Smith, he just Cheez Doodles. He would just want Cheez Doodles. And I learned very quickly that Cheez Doodles are, they're not like a typical, if it's a bag of Y's, you can get that at basically any bodega, any newsstand. Cheez Doodles would take, I would be wandering Penn Station. I think there's Dwayne Reed down there. I would be wandering Penn Station trying to find, it wasn't an easy ask. I don't think he did it on purpose. He probably had no idea, right? He had just people were bringing him Cheez Doodles, but you couldn't come back without the Cheez Doodles, right? It doesn't matter if you were gone 45 minutes and had to walk 20 blocks. So I would often go on these Cheez Doodle runs while I was there, and then he often also that and dinner. And again, I don't think it was on purpose. I think he would often underestimate the amount it cost. So let's say it would cost me, his dinner would cost $20. He would give me, 10. I don't think they'd be cheap. I think just maybe not keeping up with prices. Right? Yeah. So that was my experience there.
So was he a nice guy? First of all,
yeah, he was a nice guy. Yeah, he didn't know my name. Like there was one of us during every shift, right? And these guys were just rotating faces. So he wasn't particularly nice, but that comes off wrong. He wasn't an issue. It was just completely normal. Yeah, it was all good.
He had such a fascinating career himself. I mean, just
yes.
Yeah, just involved in so many different things. So before I ask about other things, all right, let's talk about your book, A Hollywood Ending, The Dreams and Drama of the LeBron Lakers. Great book. I was fortunate enough to get a copy beforehand. So how did the book come about? Was it something that you had wanted to write or something that you were commissioned to do where someone said, I want a book on the Lakers? How did it all happen?
No one comes to me with any ideas. Honestly, so I've been covering the NBA, let's say give or take 10 years. There's two parts to this answer, right? So, or three. One part is that covering the NBA for 10 years, and I really had never covered LeBron. One of the things, kind of one of my strategies as a reporter is to sort of zag a little bit. And LeBron is not a zag, right? LeBron is overcovered in terms of day-to-day coverage. And for me, I've never been in Cleveland, Miami, wasn't in LA, I'm based in New York. It was just never something that, like, okay, I never felt there was much for me to lend to that conversation, right? But having done this for 10 years and LeBron being the biggest, most preeminent, most important, I'm going to say, if not, definitely basketball player, if not athlete of my lifetime, right? In terms of my sports watching. I know you want to say him and Tom Brady. I don't know who else you put in, right? That's like the 1 and 2 there, really. Just felt like something I wanted to do, right? As an NBA writer, I wanted to write about him and learn more about him and sort of apply the lens I use to look at the NBA to him. Just felt like something, another check mark on the league, on how a check mark for my career that I could apply to this. So that was that. And then there's the other part. Then there's that. The other things I'm interested in are power, right? I find power really interesting. Power dynamics really interesting in the NBA. It goes back. A lot of the stuff I write about goes back to like sort of the palace intrigue, Game of Thrones styles battles that take place behind closed doors. That
was fascinating. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, then and the stuff that we don't see happen, but impacts what happens on the court, right? And I'm always interested in kind of pulling back the curtain and diving into those narratives. And I knew the Lakers and LeBron, this merger of these two iconic franchises under one roof was just right for that. And then 3 is, not as important, but it matters is, when you're writing a book, you want it to sell, right? And LeBron and the Lakers is a topic that people are interested in. So, that applies here too.
Well, just based on what you said, at the beginning of the book, it seems like the Buss family was at least aware of it. And while not actively helping, were they at least okay with you doing it? I mean, how did they look at it when you first started going around and saying, this is what I want to do in conducting interviews?
Yeah, so and the Buss family, they own the Lakers, right? So Jerry Buss is the famously bought the Lakers in the 60s basically for nothing, maybe 70s, sorry, I should get that date exact. Turn them into what they are, right? Basically built Showtime, passed the team on to his children. It was a little messy in terms of how they did that. Now his daughter, Jeannie Buss, until recently was running. She just sold it, but until recently was running the team. So when I do this, when I always reach out, anytime I write about anybody, and especially for a book, you have to, I send a nice note. Here's what I'm doing. Here's my background. Here's what I'm interested in. Yada, yada, yada. Usually the answer is cool. Thanks, but no thanks. More than fine. These are long processes. And I actually met with Jeannie Buss a couple times. We had a couple off-the-record meetings, meals, drinks, whatever. And I believe, and I'm going to reveal, they were off the record, which means I'm not supposed to share it, but she's talked about it publicly, so I feel like I can also. She mentioned in interviews that there was a writer doing a book who she met with, so therefore I can. So yes, and she I think some things she would say was like, I don't really know why you're doing this book, just like, sure, I think it's silly. We don't need another book. Who cares about this stuff anymore? Things along those lines, which I respect, but it's also not her choice to make. But they were fine with it. And then, I have some theories, but 2 years down the line, I get a letter then from a famous defamation lawyer named Marty Singer, who they had sort of commissioned to run their dealings with me, basically telling me, hey, we're watching you, basically. And later on, it got a little messier. And I put this in the book. That's what I was just about to ask you. So, right, they sent you a letter that you said in the book, not a cease and desist, but it felt kind of threatening. So you said you have some theory. So what do you think changed? And what's your reaction that you get a threatening legal letter from the Lakers? I laugh, honestly. I genuinely laugh. I got it. I remember it was game 1 of the NBA Finals. I'm bad with the years. It was what year? 2024. The Celtics. I was at the game. on courtside the sideline about an hour before tip-off of game one of the finals, and I see this email come on my phone. So I open it up and look, and literally showed a few friends laughing. Because one, it's like, okay, I guess I'm getting stuff. People, if I wasn't getting anything interesting, or if they weren't hearing about things I was looking into, they wouldn't care, right? So it's sort of a compliment. From a PR, it's not my job. I never understand from a PR perspective why, and I had this a little bit in my Sixers book, but not to the same extent. I never understand in general why people don't work with reporters. It doesn't mean you have to give them everything, but it's just bad PR. Like, you should just be bringing me in and spending 2 hours with me and trying to tell me your side of the story, and then giving me all that stuff. What's my theory? I don't know. I got this. I think they saw me talking to LeBron. I think somebody saw me talking to LeBron's agent at the NBA Combine and reported back, and that might have spooked them a little bit. I don't know if the impending sale. I genuinely don't know. But I know is they threatened to sue me, right? They sent letters to me threatening, saying that they would sue. Because what people don't understand, the way it works is, even if they don't participate, we send fact checking, or at least that's what I do. So I send them basically a list of 40 anecdotes, and I always call it negative anecdotes, so I don't need a fact check if somebody says that Jeannie Buss is a brilliant owner. Like, I don't really need to get Jeannie Buss's response to that. It's more negative things, right? And what always happens, whenever anyone gets a document, and I get it, I'm sympathetic to it. They get the document, I think they start thinking, oh my God, this is a hit job, because you're just seeing 40 points, negative. This person says this person says this. So I get it. They reacted strongly to it. Again, instead of just getting on the phone with me. We went back and forth, or they sent us their responses. Most of them were a few things they had, like, we looked at this fact checking, and this is before the book publishes, and that's a good point. I can tweak it on my end because that's fair, right? Some of it not so much. So they threatened to sue me basically, and I guess we'll see what happens. I don't think they will, because they don't have a case, but God bless.
Did the Buss family or the Lakers organization actively or officially forbid people from cooperating with you?
I don't know how it go. I don't know. I don't have access there internally, but yeah, there was made clear to people not to, anyone who would ask them would not cooperate, right? Now they've had a lot of people in and out of that building. But they would tell people for sure. They don't want people to cooperate for sure.
So can you just briefly go into the Buss family dynamic? Because this was one of the most fascinating things that I found in the book, how Jeannie rose to the top from among the rest of her siblings from the team to head the team.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna try. It's hard to keep up. Jerry Buss, famous around LA for just being promiscuous and playboy and with younger women, but being a brilliant businessman and owner, right? And a basketball executive. And that's, I think that's not even just Lakers people say that. Anyone in the NBA will say that. And if anyone who's watched the show Winning Time on HBO is about the Lakers, and John C. Reilly played Jerry Buss. So just a legendary sports character. He dies and leaves the team basically via a trust. I'm not going to go into complicated that trust dynamics of it, but to his children. And then you keep up with this one, and the children's are Johnny, Jimmy, Janie, Jeannie, Joey, Jesse. Try to say that 6 times fast. Okay. Joey and Jesse they're from a different mother. The first 4 have the same mother. And basically it becomes a whole, Succession. Like, this is really, if you took this show Succession, applied it to the NBA, that's the Buss family, right? Succession like drama about who gets to run the team, who gets to be a successor, who gets to run the team. I'm going to fast forward a bit, but basically the older brothers are not the most, I'm trying to choose my words carefully, buttoned up, savvy. They're just, they fulfill a lot of cliches, right? Of children of wealthy owners who want to run their parents' businesses, right? So Johnny flames out. Basically, the team and the team ends up being left to Jim, or Jim gets to run basketball decisions. Jeannie gets to run the business side, but is also the final one in charge. Jim, in the end, does a really bad job running the basketball side, though there's a few things that work against him, that some sliding doors moments that could have changed things. And Jeannie essentially fires her brother Jim because she says her father left her that power, which he did. though the siblings sort of disagree about how much power he left her. And before that could happen, Jimmy and Johnny, again, keep up with all the J's here, try to orchestrate a boardroom coup, meaning they find some language that would basically figure out a way to get Jeannie out of it and remove Jeannie's title of remove Jeannie from the inner circle of board members, which then would prevent her from serving as the governor. I know this is a lot. And Jeannie then has to come back at them with her lawyer and basically use some leverage in finding out that they owed money to loan sharks, all this kind of nonsense. Ends up being Jeannie on top. So I think that's how we got to get there. But just, I mean, I'm condensing 20 years and just, it's just wild. It's just a wild time.
It was incredible. It was just more than like Succession. It read like, a medieval thing, like the king dies and the siblings are fighting over the power, who's going to rule the kingdom.
It's a Shakespearean, right? It's really for sure it's wild.
So that came into play a lot during a lot of decisions because the Phil Jackson situation was one which I both loved and hated because I know eventually he goes to the Knicks, which I hated. So that was one. So how often did that come into play? Where they're like trying to like basically go around each other, backstab each other?
Yeah, the final 2 years they didn't trust each other because it becomes, then I left out, right? There's this big moment, this big meeting, and as I was telling you, but basically this big meeting where Jeannie goes to Jim's. This is when she's running business and her brother is running, but he gets compared, like he's known as the Fredo of the family, right? That's the god, but he's known as the Fredo of the family. And she's saying, when are we going to be in the playoffs? Things are going really poorly. And he says, I promise you 3 years. And the other brothers in this family meeting are saying, what? That's crazy, 3 years. And she goes, well, you know what? Fine, but I'm going to hold you to that. If not, I'm going to fire you if you don't get me in 3 years. And he says, fine. And they shake on it. And this hangs over everything because then he starts making decisions to chase this timeline. And then because of that, she becomes fearful and trusts him even less, thinking that he's going to make win now moves and mortgage the whole future just so he can get to the playoffs so he can say, hey, look, you can't fire me. I'm in the playoffs. And it just becomes an entire disaster.
So let's get to LeBron because, all right, LeBron leaves the Cavs, signs with the Lakers. No big decision programming on TV for that one. So from what you've learned, how much power was he promised or how much power did he ultimately have? Like, could LeBron say, I don't want this player anymore, and that would happen, or I don't want this coach, or I want this coach? Was that like sort of written in or understood?
Would it be written in? So understood is interesting. So the answer is yes and no. How's that? So, I mean, yes, did he get power? For sure. Again, not written in, but just being the best player on the team, and his his agency represented him, and they ended up trading for Anthony Davis too, who was another major Clutch client. Clutch is the agency, and they're a great player, right? So they have power, but it was my reporting and my understanding is that it was never as he never had the level of power that was portrayed in the public. The greatest example being that the head coach he wanted the Lakers to hire in 2019, Ty Lue, the Lakers completely lowball him. Ty Lue was his coach, was LeBron's coach in Cleveland. They won the title together. They got along really well. LeBron wanted, he was there. Ty Lue was a former Laker. Like, this was the guy. This guy was made for the job, and Jeannie Buss decided to lowball him, or the Lakers lowballed him, offered him a really small contract compared to what championship-winning coaches usually receive. And that was not what LeBron wanted. He was furious. So again, it's hard to say that LeBron gets anything he wants when that's one of the most important decisions they would make, and it didn't go his way. So there were other things that they were able to leverage and other players that they were able to sign, and most famously Bronny, which we can get to later, which is a whole separate thing, his son. But then again, I know Bronny comes after. Then later on, LeBron, the Lakers traded for Russell Westbrook. It becomes a disaster. LeBron certainly played a role in that. And after that is sort of where you see a line of demarcation where the Lakers basically said, we're done with this for the most part, right? We're done letting LeBron, what he can do is passive aggressive tweets, his comments, all that stuff. We're just out of that business. We still want LeBron here, but we're no longer catering to him in the same way. Again, Bronny's a separate conversation. We talk about Bronny. So LeBron had power, but I don't think it was any different than Giannis Antetokounmpo has power in Milwaukee. They signed his brother. Like, if you are an All NBA star, you get power in your team.
Yes, I'm saying
the nature of the sport.
So, what was the perception around the team of LeBron at this time? Like, that was there fear, like, that he could kind of like say, "Hey, I don't want you here anymore."
I mean, Probably, yeah, but like no different than, again, that's the same. That's the same as that's the same with any star player, right? Like that happens throughout the league. Um, so I will say, in year one was a bit funky. Year one, LeBron signs the Lakers. In the first year of the Lakers, they had this team full of young players, right? And that's where what you're talking about. That was sort of the greatest sense of that. Team full of young players. LeBron comes in before the year, says, "No, I want it to be a process. We want to go slow. We're all good with that." And very clearly that's not true. Whether he was lying, whether he changed his mind, whether it happened organically, I don't know. But very quickly starts agitating for the Lakers to trade basically every younger player they have for Anthony Davis, who was a star, who he wanted. And the players knew it. They knew it, and it really killed that locker room that year and killed the team. And there's other moments, other instances of LeBron not being part of a team. Like I have a story in the book about literally the first team event they have. It's at this resort, this casino resort. They're a big sponsor. It's a known thing. Lakers, everyone goes. Kobe used to go, right? It's like this is the thing. You go glad hand, season ticket holders, and all this stuff. Everyone shows up. And LeBron doesn't go with the team on the bus down there. And not only does he not go with the team, he's supposed to take a chopper. He takes a chopper, lands on the golf course, but there's an Ohio State football game going on. He goes up to watch the game, and the DJ announced he's coming down, but basically he never comes down. He just never comes down to the casino for the sponsored event, which sounds silly, but just from the very beginning, it's just, and this is again his first official team event. He's making very clear that he is not one, and he is not a Laker and the Lakers rules don't apply to him, and he is not one of the group. That changed later on, like I have plenty of stories in the book about when the team on the way to the bubble, in the bubble, his leadership was A+, and things he did and his leadership was, and his ability to kind of push them through during the bubble time when things were really strenuous and stressful. A lot of people believe that was sort of the biggest catalyst and the reason why the Lakers were able to win the title. But year one, when he looked around and clearly saw a young team that was not championship ready, he just mentally checked out.
Yeah, you have so many great stories in the book. That was one of them. But so let's talk about Bronny. What was the feeling around the team, I guess, when Bronny was kind of pushed into playing?
I think it's one of these things everyone knew was going to happen, right? Like it was just known. Everyone knew, and I think players know. First of all, here's the thing with Bronny, right? So be clear: is that one thing is known, two things are known. He is not an NBA player, and that's fine. But he's not. But he's supposed to be a great kid, and everyone loves him. And teammates, and he works hard, and coaches, and everyone for not entitled, nothing like that. So people feel bad for him. I won't say players feel bad for him like that, but I think just people, like, there was a famous clip from Summer League that went viral of Jaylen Brown watching him play Summer League next to his girlfriend, a Celtic star, and saying to her, "Man, bro, I forget what exact, but Bronny can't play, or Bronny's just not good enough." But he wasn't angry, and his lips were red, and it went viral. And it was very clear, like, it wasn't him being angry or leveling an accusation against LeBron or the Lakers. It was sort of just like resigned to it and sad about it, right? So that's one. Two, everyone knew it was going to happen, and like, it's a second round pick, and who cares? He works hard, right? I don't think the players really care that much in terms of that stuff.
How do you see the relationship between LeBron and the Lakers ending?
It's a great question. I don't know. How's that for an answer? It's fascinating to me because he right now, right? He's they've broken up with him. Let's start there, right? Yeah. So that means they're happy to have him around. To me, the greatest example of this is when it was 2 years ago after LeBron was agitating and doing some of his passive aggressive comments and things like that, and the Warriors reach out thinking, oh, maybe there could be a trade here. Who knows, right? LeBron's complaining. Let's call the Lakers, and their owner calls Jeannie Buss, and Jeannie Buss doesn't say no. Which again, and this is the daughter of Jerry Buss, who built the team on star power and the idea that you need stars and you cater to your iconic franchise players and Kobe and all that's what she believes in. And LeBron is that, obviously. And she didn't say no. She said, you have to ask LeBron and Rich Paul, his agent, right? Which to me, that was sort of, gives you a lens into, okay, like, we're willing. We're willing to, even though they deny it, but that's obviously willing because they could have said no. Then this year, and more telling this year, was LeBron had a player option, and LeBron doesn't like playing up on expiring deals, and the Lakers haven't said this, but LeBron picked up that player option, meaning he has one more year on his contract. And then his agent put out some comments that made no sense about LeBron wants to focus on winning, and we're not sure if the Lakers are there, blah, blah, blah. Point being, LeBron does not pick up a player option willingly. If it was up to him, he obviously would have wanted to negotiate a new deal, right? With a new contract. And the Lakers very clearly were not having any conversation, right? So they've initiated step one of the breakup. It doesn't mean they don't want him there. It doesn't mean that next year they're not willing to have him here or in LA. But once they traded for Luka Doncic, they no longer had to. He was no longer the son, right? They no longer had to worry about what he wanted. He's still a great player, and so I think sometimes. I think there's sometimes pushback because of the way we talk about him, because he's LeBron James, and the way he acts, and you say, well, you're not the player you once were, and I think it sort of underestimates how good he still is. So yeah, he's not a top 3 player, he's still a top 20 player, which is fantastic, but he's not a top 3 player, and that's a big difference. So the question becomes then, what does LeBron want? And it's very unclear, and I think he's been backed into a corner here. Is the problem. So you asked me how it ends with the Lakers. His options to me seemingly are: you retire after this year, you sign another 1-year deal or 2-year deal with the Lakers, or you figure out a way to go back to the Cleveland Cavaliers, because we know LeBron is going to be a player who wants to do a big farewell tour, because that's just how he is, and he earned it. And I think he's conscious and aware that if you do a farewell tour for a team that you've never played for and have no relationship with, it's just strange. It's like Michael Jordan, the Wizards, so like, is he gonna go to the Mavericks? That's just weird. So I think Lakers or Cavs are really it, and I don't know how it ends. And most people around the NBA don't either.
Well, did you see? I'm sure you saw like Luka's comments yesterday. It was like yesterday, I think, right? About that he thinks that he's going to go back to the Cavs.
Yeah, it makes sense, but again, the Cavaliers aren't going to spend this year. And the other thing LeBron wants to be is he doesn't want to be on a minimum deal, right? His whole thing is I want to be paid max salary, so it's hard. He's boxed himself in. There's no way for him to get everything he wants, and I'm really interested to see. And this is the first time in his probably his entire life, I don't know, where he's not able to get everything he wants, and that's hard to react to. Yeah, and I'm interested to see how he reacts to that and how he handles that.
I'm going to side question here for Luka, since you were covering this all happened while you were doing the book. When Luka went to the Lakers, all over social media, everyone had all the conspiracy theory that the league orchestrated this.
I don't believe it. In general, yeah, I've seen that. In general, and maybe as a more of a social political commentary, that I try to stay away from the conspiracy theories. Right, I get people like it. I try to stay away from that stuff. But I mean, I guess sure. But no, we know what happened, because the Mavericks general manager has been very upfront. The Mavericks have been very upfront about why they traded Luka. We can all say they're morons, but they've been very upfront. They thought he was fat and didn't play defense. Like, they haven't said this specifically, but it's been made very clear. So I don't think we need to attribute a conspiracy theory to it. They're telling us why they traded him, right? So.
So you in the book also, because you had how shocked was AD to the trade, Anthony Davis, and did LeBron know anything about this ahead of time?
Yeah, no. So I have in the book, I have the scene like when I have in the book, you can read about the group chat, right? Yeah. The players' group chat after the trade went through, that basically in AD, I forget the exact order of operation. I can read it, but this AD finds out, and it's a little fuzzy about who called who when, but this is all happening in the moment. And the story I always tell is I was so we can back up. The trade happened a Saturday night in February, I believe, late January or early February, maybe late January. The Lakers were at MSG that night. I was at that game, and let's say an hour before the trade, outside the Lakers locker room, Rich Paul, LeBron's agent, Anthony Davis's agent, is hanging in the hallway there, just with LeBron's family. When the teams come to New York often, especially Lakers, becomes a big family. Like, it becomes a family vacation type of thing, right? They go out for dinner and whatever. So LeBron's family was there with LeBron's agent, hanging out. He was talking to reporters, laughing. This was not a man who was in the midst of finding out that one of his clients was about to, and the client on his most important client's team, right, was about to be traded in a shocking trade. It just was not. So the idea that he knew about it beforehand, and I think there was some initial reporting that he did. He did not, maybe beforehand, meeting like a half hour, but they had no clue this was happening, right? The trade basically gets confirmed. We can actually add this. This is good for this podcast. I should look this up. Basically, the trade was agreed to around a Friday, but we needed a third or fourth team in there. And to get the third or fourth team for salary cap reasons, one of the players involved has a agent named Steve Human, who is a observant Jew and keeps Shabbat, and the other trade can't go through. And again, these are really these salary cap mechanics, but basically part of the trade can't go through until this player's agent signs off on the deal, because there's some kind of extension thing that he's basically needs to sign off on. Long story short, Shabbat, they couldn't get it, so the trade had to be held until after Saturday, until the agent could answer the phone, for he could give his approval. We can then have that trade done, so therefore the Lakers trade and Mavericks trade can go through. Anyway, so this happened Saturday night. Rob Pelinka, Lakers general manager, calls in some order LeBron, Rich Paul, the agent for LeBron, and Anthony Davis. As this is happening, Bronny sees the news from Shams Charania, from ESPN's Shams Charania, on a tweet, and Bronny shares it in the Lakers group chat and says, "Is this real?" AD at some point after speaking to Lakers, but says, "Did these blanks N-words just trade me? Good luck, fellas." Leaves the chat. LeBron shares an emoji basically saying he's not happy. So that's how they all find out. So no, LeBron did not know about it before. LeBron also got over it pretty fast, I think, realizing, wait, Luka Doncic just coming to play with me? That's great. But it was pretty fascinating. And again, it goes to the point of power, right? And who has the power, and LeBron's no longer that guy, and AD is no longer, and Clutch are no longer needed because we have Luka Doncic coming in. So we're good now, right? And that's how this stuff works.
Well, how's the dynamic that you said LeBron was happy that Luka was coming, but he's no longer the guy there now. He's no longer the one the team builds around. Has that affected anything?
It's really interesting. They swear no. People close to LeBron say like he loves Luka, and he's not upset about that. It's very strange. I don't know, and it's because LeBron's acting. What's the word? I don't know. Sporadically, the things he's saying and doing are very confusing, right? So after the trade happens, he gets asked about it. Basically, are you happy? Do you want to be here? And he says, well, if I didn't want to be here, I could have waived my no trade clause and I would have gotten up out of here before the trade deadline, which to me was very clear. And he said it with a smile. And last year, he looked really happy. There was a quote from Carmelo Anthony, who's a longtime friend of LeBron's, who has a podcast, because every player has a podcast now. And in that clip, though, he's talking about he's never seen LeBron happier, right? So LeBron looked really happy last year. And I think he loves Luka. Again, it goes back to the contract. I think he has no problem having Luka be the guy on the team, on the court. But the fact that the Lakers wouldn't negotiate a contract with him, I think it's fair to connect dots and assume has really, really got under his skin.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you a couple of other quick NBA questions while I have you there, before I let you go. So we both said we're Knicks fans. What did you make of the Tibbs firing? Expected? Shocked?
It was both surprising and understandable, which sounds like a paradox, but and both not deserved, and I get where they came from, right? So it's hard to argue a guy who had the success that Tibbs had with this team. It's hard to argue that he deserves to be fired, but the offense did look bland, and there was an issue with some of the players not being happy with him, most notably OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges weren't the biggest fans. So I get that. It's all fine. I do think the Knicks are going... I think Mike Brown's fine. He might add some offensive diversity. I am curious to see what happens. One of Tibbs' greatest strengths was and people criticized him for it, but I think it was a strength. It would go both ways, right? He didn't care about the drama, didn't care about players' feelings. I think sometimes you could do a better job with that stuff. But his whole thing was just win the next game, and that's all that matters. If you win, nobody cares. And again, that contributes to playing a starter 45 minutes on a night in February, which is probably not smart. But it also lets you smother some of the drama that can take over, especially in a team in New York with expectations, right? If you're just ignoring it. And I'm curious to see what happens now with a new coach who might feel differently if, a player starts complaining about shot attempts, if that becomes a thing where Tibbs just didn't care. He just ignored it, and it didn't matter to him because he was going to coach his way. So I'm curious to see how that plays out.
That was always the big thing, that he ran them into the ground, that everyone was complaining about. Do you see them as a viable contender?
Well, the East stinks. So, if you I assume them or the Cavaliers are making the finals. I guess if not... If they don't make the finals, it's a disappointment. And if you get to the finals, I wouldn't pick them to beat any team in the West. But if you are in the finals, the conference finals, by definition, you're a contender. You never know what happens. So sure.
So, all right. So on your Twitter feed, we both said you're like me. Unfortunately, you're a Mets and Jets fan also. So yeah, I saw your Twitter complaining, and that was pretty much my reaction that day. It must have been the same day. Both the Mets and Jets, how terrible they looked. So what do you make of them right now?
I'm done. No, the Jets I punted on. The Jets stink. They're out of my life. Basically, the only way I'll watch a Jets game is if they happen by some luck to make the red zone and Scott Hansen cuts out of a red zone feed to bring them into on my TV, right? So I'm not watching Jets games, and I feel like Aaron Glenn is all talk, just talking about being tough and nothing actually, no substance there.
I did not want him as the hire either, but yes.
Yeah, the Mets I'm infuriated by, and I want to put this David Stearns. So let me back up. One thing I enjoy about being a sports fan for the non-basketball sports is I'm able to tap into my my inner animal of a sports fan and become just a clean. When I talk about the NBA, I'm very rational and objective, and I'm thoughtful, and that's no fun. So I like to become like a WFAN caller when I think about the Mets and Jets, and just be nonsensical and angry. But it's fun that way. That's kind of lets me scratch my itch as a sports fan. And I think David Stearns, I want you to find me a worse trade deadline from a GM than what David Stearns, who I believe is a member of the Tribes. I don't want to criticize him too much. Yes. But I mean, Mullins is maybe the worst center fielder I've ever seen in my life. I play on a softball team, weekly Sunday morning softball team, and we joke that we have between our 5 regular outfielders, we have maybe 3 working labrums, and I think Mullins would fit in with our arms on our field, right? So he's just horrendous, and if no trades were made, the Mets would have locked up the wild card already. If we didn't have Mullins or Helsley, they'd be locked in. So I'm just furious about this.
I don't disagree. All right, so what are you working on next? What's the next thing project that you have going?
I don't know yet. Let's let this one go. I hope this does well, and we'll see from there. I genuinely don't know.
When's the book available?
October 21st. You can get it wherever books are sold. Makes no difference to me. Buy it, share it, all that good stuff.
And most important, that people care a lot about, how can people follow you on social media?
Yeah, all my name. It's on Twitter and Instagram. We're starting to build up the TikTok now because that's something you have to do in 2025. All that stuff. Or X, I guess, not Twitter, but whatever it's called.
Yaron, it was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for joining me today. You're welcome back anytime. Love to get a chance to discuss sports. So,
thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Again, this has been The Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen. And again, a very special thanks to Yaron Weitzman. Please get the book. And please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thanks for tuning in to The Jewish Lens, where all items used was strictly kosher.